Harmony on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. In a moment, headliners. But first, let's bring you the latest news headlines on GB News. And the top story, the Prime Minister says the international system for policing human trafficking is not working. Tomorrow, Rishi Sunak will warn the Council of Europe in Iceland that the world's most vulnerable are paying the price for the failure to prevent unlawful migration. Downing Street added the challenge is not just a UK issue. It comes as Mr Sunak is trying to pass the illegal migration bill, which is set to stop asylum seekers from crossing the channel in small boats. And today, the Home Secretary insisted it's not hypocritical for her, the child of migrants, to push for lower migration in the UK. In a speech, Suela Braveman defended the government's plan to cut net migration, saying it isn't racist to want to control borders. She also argued that mass and rapid migration would be a burden on housing and public services. And she said the UK should instead be focusing on creating highly skilled workers at home.
There is no good reason why we can't train up enough truck drivers, butchers, fruit pickers, builders or welders. Brexit enables us to build a high-skilled, high-wage economy that is less dependent on low-skilled foreign labour.
Well, the government promises to put more British produce on supermarket shelves and plates under new measures to protect farmers and promote international trade deals. The Prime Minister says that supporting farmers and food producers is essential for economic growth. The proposal includes a £30 million investment in new technologies and a bid to ensure farmers can get a fair price for their produce. The government will set out the plans at a food summit tomorrow. Now, the UK is to train Ukraine's pilots to fly Western fighter jets, but has no plans to provide the aircraft. At a meeting at Chequers today, the Prime Minister told President Zelensky of Ukraine that providing warplanes wasn't straightforward. But Rishi Sunak did promise further air defence missiles and drones under the condition they were used only across Ukrainian soil. In news here at home, a former Met police officer allegedly missed an opportunity to properly investigate Wayne Couzens before he murdered Sarah Everard. Samantha Lee attended a disciplinary hearing today, accused of failing to make the correct investigative inquiries over two incidents when Couzens exposed himself to female staff at a restaurant in Kent. It's claimed there were issues with witness statements and evidence, and her investigative work was allegedly rushed. Miss Lee is said to have breached the force's standards on duties and responsibilities, charges she denies. The hearing's expected to last several days. And the police watchdog is investigating after an 11-year-old boy was tasered at a holiday park in Scotland. Police were called to a caravan park near Ayr just after 11 o'clock in the evening on the 22nd of March. The child, who was holding a knife, fell to the ground after being tasered. Police Scotland say the incident has now been referred to the Police Investigations and Review Commissioner. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight's Bodie and Doyle are Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer. How are you both? You well?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Simon.
Excellent. Did you enjoy that?
Why are you stretching your arm out like that?
Well, there was a small operative handing me the teleprompt device, but don't worry, it was in my firm and capable hands now.
It looked like you're doing yoga.
I know. Stretch it out. That's better. So, the Daily Mail gets us underway with tomorrow's front pages. The Daily Mail has Gove's blast at Starmer bid to rig elections. A lot of journalists in that headline. The Times have fifth of all taxpayers will now be in the 40p band. That is a range of taxation rather than a pop outfit. The Guardian, Tory MPs tell Braverman quit the PM pitch and stick to the day job. The Express have Suela, white people should not feel guilty. Well, that's an interesting headline. The iNews, UK backs Ukraine to join NATO. And finally, the Daily Star, close encounters of the boring kind. Well, those were your front pages. We will have a look at them in more detail now. So we kick off, I don't know which one of you has got it, Leo, we've got it, the Daily Express, Suela Braveman telling white people not to feel guilty.
Yes, so Zoella Braverman says white people should not feel any sense of collective guilt. So, I mean, the headline's a bit misleading. She's not saying, like, all white people everywhere shouldn't feel guilty. If you're in court and you've committed a crime, you possibly should feel guilty, but this...
You've hidden
sort of
receipts from an expensive dress from your husband.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
There are grounds for feeling guilty, but this sort of collective guilt where, you know, under identity politics, we're supposed to feel collective guilt over our historic role in slavery. She says that's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. I mean, how am I supposed to... I'm supposed to apologise and atone for slavery? What am I supposed to say? Like, oh, sorry, I had a few drinks. You know, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I wasn't there. It was hundreds of years before I was born.
It's such a regressive idea, isn't it? Collective guilt, original sin. It was the thing that remotely progressive left-wing politics were supposed to do away with several generations ago. It was the Catholic Church which made you feel guilty just for being born. I don't know. Did the Jewish faith have that impact on you as well, Lewis?
I think a Jewish faith is all about feeling guilty about something. But more of a personal guilt that you've let your mother down.
They say there's guilt and shame, and they're subtly different. But I've never been able to work out which one it is. But I don't know whether it's both of those.
No, there is a difference. And if you told me this question in advance, I could have come up with an answer.
Well, you both have the Old Testament. I mean, that's where it comes from, isn't it? It's the Adam and Eve in the Garden of...
well, if we can get back to Suela Braverman.
What I want to ask, let me just come out. Maybe I'm going even right at the Daily Express, but, I mean, how have we got to this situation? How would this have looked to you? I don't know how old you guys... I can remember reading tabloid newspapers in the 1980s. I remember seeing Falklands War headlines, which are going to come up later. On the Sun, how would you have felt if you had seen a right-leaning tabloid newspaper in 1985 with a Home Secretary telling us as a nation not to feel guilty for being white? I mean, how did we get here?
And also, she'll be condemned. The Guardian will be running op-eds tomorrow saying she's a horrible fascist racist, this is exactly like Hitler, and all that kind of stuff.
It's extraordinary.
Not, I mean, she was speaking at NatCon, which is the sort of National Conservative Conference, and she was making quite a lot of, the noises that sound... I mean, it's described as right-wing, but as you say, in 1985 would have been pretty moderate, pretty centrist stuff. And she got in a good dig at Keir Starmer over gender recognition, saying that he could be Labour's first female Prime Minister. He doesn't know what a woman is. But she also said that multiculturalism was a recipe for communal disaster, and doubled down on remarks last month that she made about grooming gangs being almost all British Pakistani.
Now, this is interesting because not many people not many Home Secretaries will take multiculturalism head on and say, no, actually, the point is to integrate, the point is to assimilate. Assimilation became almost, again, I'm not being funny, but seriously, that was a Jewish thing, wasn't it? That British Jewish people were very successful at doing. Like, it was a point of pride that you would do that you would kind of go, I am proud to be part, and multiculturalism has become such a, I don't know, like a religious, quasi-religious faith.
It's an ideology, multiculturalism.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, the last person to say what she said basically was Enoch Powell.
Well, he said it couldn't be done. His warning was, if you get mass immigration, it won't happen. Mass immigration will just drip feed immigration. Then people, you know, at such a speed, you arrive, you look around, you see what the dominant culture is, you adapt, you assimilate, you integrate, you make your contribution. Mass immigration, you arrive en masse, you don't feel there's any burden upon you to make any changes in your own behaviour.
A lot of people think that Britain needs to be changed. You have to look in the eyes of not us, but them. And they think that the people that are coming will actually make Britain maybe different, but definitely better, or maybe the same.
I think it's insanity to say, like, you know, the Western liberal democracy, which, you know, Britain has got a proud role in and upholding, you know, and we've got equal rights and all that kind of stuff. That's
what it needs is a bit of Sharia law.
Yeah, but that's absolute insanity to think that, a really strict patriarchal religion is going to fix this.
I mean, I've always think that, you know, your ideal, like, kind of multicolourism, there should be different threads woven into a tapestry or rug, right? That's fine. That's a good idea for different colours, different patterns emerge. But the threads need to be all of roughly the same sort of thickness and flexibility and of the same material.
And of being basic British values such as...
red, white and blue.
We tolerate, you know, everybody, you know, we tolerate LGBTQ people. Women have got the right to vote. I mean...
I've got to bring in Lewis on the next story now, Daily Mail, and we have Michael Gove, who is, I don't know, this is a little bit of a... he said, she said, battering back and forth, isn't it, on rigging, vote rigging and so on at the moment.
Well, this is them I guess they're trashing Labour. This is another story, let's trash Labour. And they're saying that Starmer wants to, when he gets in, which he will get in, he wants to let 4 million EU people vote.
Up to 6 million.
Up to 6 million. OK, we don't really even know how many people are in the country, probably. I mean, I hope they don't know that I'm here. And so basically, what this, and also let 16-year-olds vote.
16-year-olds seems to be more worrying, but there's a number of things, because Jacob Rees-Mogg today at the same national convention, National Conservatives and whatever, effectively, to all intents and purposes, admitted with a bit of a wink and a nudge that the Tories had hoped to suppress certain elements of the electorate by introducing the need for voter ID. And in fact, it backfired on them because they turned out to be the elderly and confused who had turned up to vote, who would normally have voted Tory. Whereas all the 18-year-olds and recent immigrants had loads of ID on them, you know.
Because they need to get into nightclubs.
Exactly, yes, that's right.
But
so, you know, this kind of thing can work.
At the end of the day, this is just an indication of how the political system in this country, nothing personal, it's a great country, but the political system is substandard. That you can have a guy elected and the change can happen so fast it'll make your head spin.
It's like something that Erdogan would do or something, you know, a strongman dictator, you know, changing that radical a change. It's like redrawing boundaries to let
I think it would be deeply unpopular even if Labour had a decent majority, which is no like firm indication yet that they will have to, that they can rule without a coalition. I think to introduce 16-year-olds especially would be, to be fair to the EU people, I mean, that is, as it's been discussed endlessly on this channel today, you have Commonwealth people who can vote. We're not talking about just the whole of the EU. Obviously, you have to have some commitment to living and working here and paying taxes and so on. Well, that kind of feels to me like maybe that's a debate worth having.
Sounds pretty
But isn't it true? I forgot what I was going to say.
It's something to do with steak, but we're coming back to that later. What do we have in the I News, Leo?
So the I has UK backs Ukraine to join NATO. So Britain will back NATO membership for Ukraine after the war with Russia has ended. So, I mean, I don't know when that's going to be. Are they looking to 2048?
Well, it's certainly...
This could be a while. But there's a picture there of Rishi and Volodymyr Zelensky meeting. And I think the reason they meet so often is because they're the same height.
Yes, so I was going to say.
Normally, if it's like Zelensky has to go and meet, like, you know, Erdogan or...
Well, Macron. Like Macron's another one. You know, like, Rishi and Macron, they looked adorable together in their...
I don't think you should be allowed to make any jokes about height of anybody.
Zelensky, he's proven he's... He may have the stature of a 4-year-old boy, but he has the heart of a lion.
Oh, absolutely. And it probably helps you in the bunker. I mean, I'd constantly be banging my head.
Steady on. I am interested, though, by the thought that they will become NATO members, and I'm not encouraged by it, to be honest, because there's no benefit to NATO. They're purely being placed there as a provocation. This is exactly why Russia invaded in the first place.
That is complete conspiracy theory nonsense. A provocation to Russia?
Yes.
No, that's an absolute nonsense. This would be to stop Russia invading Ukraine. And I think, you know...
But the idea that they will become a member would be a provocation. That was what why was the provocation?
It was touted as the reason, as an excuse. But, I mean, Putin's always... I think he was threatened by Syria. I mean, it's nonsense. He invades where he wants, when he wants. He thought it was going to work.
Certainly not nonsense.
He was told
it's certainly not nonsense. There were plenty of very high-ranking foreign policy experts who were speaking very urgently about this in, like, 2014, let alone recently.
It was a mistake to say it then, when it didn't have any chance of happening. But I think
what I'm saying is...
to say it now, because there does need to be some sort of security guarantee for Ukraine.
What I'm saying now is that if you're saying as soon as this war is over, Ukraine is going to join NATO, that escalates the stakes even further for Russia. Russia is already looking at a situation where if it loses, it loses, like, everything, loses face, loses status.
In what way is Ukraine not supported by NATO now? The only way it's not is there aren't actual NATO troops on the ground.
In an enormous sense, like, America is not actually attacking, is not part of the war. If it's NATO, if they're NATO members...
given all its weaponry to someone else to fire.
That's an extraordinarily different situation than...
No, that is the point. The point is America spent, I think, 150 or 170 billion, while English people and Europeans have spent 20 billion.
No, that's not true. We've given a huge amount.
I saw Donald Trump say that, so that must be true.
America have been able to fight a proxy war at zero cost of body bags, which is the only point at which their people start to get antsy.
How many people die when you waste their money and they're going into bankruptcy?
Well, that's possibly true.
We'll get onto that shortly. Would die if Russia was just allowed to rampage across Europe?
Lewis, tell us what's on the front page of the Star before we go to the ad break.
Close encounters of the boring kind.
Okay.
It says basically that Belgium has mass UFO sightings in Belgium, which is considered to be the dullest country in the world, which I don't think it is the dullest country.
It is not the dullest country.
No, I think, didn't they have politicians in basements, abusing
It's
people?
not remotely dull. It's like the centre of the EU, which is not exciting, but I mean, it's clearly a centre of activity. It's some bizarre hangover from, I think, just before the First World War, where it used to be, mocked because it was mainly like a country of no consequence that nevertheless Britain had a treaty to defend, and that's why we were plunged into...
Well, and also you have the French and the Flems.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And there's that weird... Have you done that weird gig for the bald guy? Who, he puts you up in his mum's house. And I remember, but she doesn't like it. So she was, hoovering around my feet, just really aggressively. You know, she obviously hated me doing that.
She has not done her history. Well, that is the front pages dispensed with. Excuse me. Join us after the break. We have tubby protesters, treacherous Ruskies, dodgy diagnoses. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, in HQ, and in the vinyl roof Ford Capri 3-litre gear we have Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer. Schaefer, the shameless self-publicist. So iNews to kick off this quartile, Leo, and in a break with tradition, I'm going to read out an entire tweet I posted nearly 7 years ago as Theresa May addressed the Tory conference in October 2016. I wrote, "I have been on Twitter since 2009. Every single Tory conference has struck Twitter as showing a shocking lurch to the right."
Yeah.
That was 7 years ago, and still it continues.
And bizarrely, we've got the most left-wing Conservative party of all time. But Suela Braveman's speech on immigration today was disrupted by Extinction Rebellion protesters. One of them was very fat, which suggests to me that he's not taking this climate change thing seriously. I mean, just if he flies anywhere, the amount of oil they'll have to burn to get him up, just to you know, reach escape velocity and leave the tarmac.
Do you think he's projecting his own desires to sort of like be more I don't know, organically successful?
Well, he's going to leave a deeper footprint out of you know, from that carbon. But I don't know why, you know, Suela Braveman doesn't just turn round to people who protest and say, no, we should have open borders, and say, OK, fine, we're going to put, instead of putting 1,500 undocumented migrants in Linton-on-Ouse or whatever sleepy British village hasn't asked for them, we're going to put them in your street and then see, you know, see if people can live with the consequences of
Ron
their
DeSantis
own
did that in America, didn't he? Of course, bust them up to a very Martha's Vineyard, isn't it? Very wealthy neighbourhood, and they lasted there for about 8 hours, I think. But their onward transport was arranged.
Called in the National Guard. It was amazing because people, I mean, the people that virtue signal and say, you know, oh, we should have these people here. They know that they're not going to actually have to deal with the people that.
We've actually got a little bit of footage we'd like to show you from the conference. I believe this is Jacob Rees-Mogg, the channel's very own, coping with a protester, possibly. Can we see this footage?
National conservatism. A few characteristics of fascism.
Well, thank you very much.
Defining.
Hey, Leo.
They can't hear you. Sorry, you can say it again now.
No. Don't say. No, I tell you, when you see people, first of all, everybody in this country is fat. Everybody in the Western world is fat. No, you are fat. You've got.
I'm not fat.
Look at the fatty liver disease in the stomach.
Can we just focus on the
I'm going to focus on it. Is that one, how they manhandled both of those people?
How should they have done it?
Well, they should have just gently said, you got to go.
Gently? You think he would have stepped back from the microphone if they'd been gentle? Would you please step away?
I think they would have been. I think probably he wouldn't have. I'm not saying that. I definitely think they should have touched him and brought him back.
Okay.
But you don't need to frog.
Would you sort of just waft him off the stage? How would you have done
in a gentle way. In a gentle way.
Well, just like you lie in food and drink until he faints.
You get a cheeseburger and lure him out.
Have you ever run any kind of organisation or conference of that kind?
I've disrupted conferences. I was in Southern Council when I was treated badly, and I actually had to sit down.
But if we can talk about what Zoella Braveman was actually saying, so she used her speech to claim that identity politics is a recipe for communal disaster and called for greater integration in UK society, including immigrants speaking English and learning British social norms. That's great stuff. Then there'll be less social tension. I think people will generally be happier with immigration if they know that people are abiding to British values and
yet this is the stuff that is always described as divisive rhetoric, whereas in fact it's obviously trying to provide some glue to get the country to kind of
maybe
unite
the country doesn't need glue. Maybe if you invite people in,
glue.
You know what? Is at the end of the day, you're saying that these immigrants are destroying the social fabric of the country. And
no, that's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's a fact.
No,
but at the end of the day,
if you look at demographic trends, I mean, by 2050, Islam is going to be the biggest religion in the UK.
And what is
wrong
with that? And some
what do you mean? What's wrong with that? Look at Iran. Look what happened in Iran. When it turned in the 70s to what it became.
No, and some people are quite happy with it. The Iranians are quite happy with it.
Ayatollah Khomeini is pretty happy with it.
At the end of the day, this is what the problem is that you see it and you think everybody else sees it the exact same way you see it. You see this as a problem. These people do not see it as a problem.
Who are these people?
These people are people who want open immigration, open borders. They feel that one world will make the place a better place. You don't see it. You don't see it, but they see it.
But Lewis, seriously, if you are being serious, can you not see that there is also an objective truth to be sought out and argued for, rather than you're describing it as if it was a preference for turquoise over gold?
Yes, in a way it is.
It's not.
In a way it is for some people.
Change the absolute fabric.
Okay, let's move on. Express now, Leo, suggestions that Wagner Group warlord Yevgeny Prigozhin is not the principal soldier of fortune we'd all assumed.
Great accent there. So this is Wagner, not the X Factor guy. No. This guy's slightly more dangerous. But he's apparently he offered intelligence to Ukrainian intelligence services to reveal the locations and details of his rival warlords on the Russian side. So on his same side are the Russian warlords, because they're all fighting against each other. They're fighting. They're always battling over who gets what ammunition. So I mean, it's interesting. It shows how Vladimir Putin rules, and internally the way Vladimir Putin rules, where he has different agencies fighting against each other, so none of them can get strong enough to topple him. It works very well like that. But in a war situation where you're actually fighting, supposed to be fighting the Ukrainian military, it doesn't work so well if your generals are fighting against each other.
But you're believing this as a real story. Here we go. I don't think this is a real story. Simon, try to be objective and you be objective. You're the host of Top Stop.
Say the line.
No.
Say the line.
No, it is not just a non-story.
Okay.
It is a story.
No, it isn't a story. It's state propaganda. You have to read through this. Who benefits from the undermining of the Wagner... Let me finish my point. Who benefits from the undermining of the Wagner Group? The Russians do, because it makes it look like the Russians are weak, and all we need to do is give a little bit more money to the Ukrainians, and they will win the thing.
So you think Russia benefits from propaganda that says Wagner is an unprincipled soldier of fortune?
No, the Ukraine benefits from it, which is why it's in the media.
So you're saying Russia is this incredibly well-organised military organisation?
No, they might not be.
Incredibly well.
Might not be.
Yet somehow, it's the equivalent of England invading Wales, and they haven't been able to take Cardiff.
No, it isn't.
I mean, I wouldn't say. Whether or not it's propaganda, and I agree to some extent that everything that comes out or makes it into the papers during a war should be studied with a degree of critical thinking. But it's not surprising or unusual either that, like, war throughout. The very first book in Western civilization is Homer's Iliad, right? That's the foundational text. The very opening chapter of that is Achilles, who is essentially a mercenary brought in by Agamemnon to beef up his force for the siege of Troy, retiring to his tent after a squabble over who gets a slave girl as a prize. Essentially the same story. This has always been how war has been fought, and it's not a million miles away from this territory, to be fair, as well.
It's state propaganda. It cannot be trusted, and this war...
Are you saying it's not true or it's not important?
I am saying I don't know whether it's true or not. It might be true. My guess is it's 60%. Probably not.
Prigozhin
60% not true.
Prigozhin has been saying similar stuff himself. So, I mean, right from his mouth.
60%. I'm sorry, but that's Lewis's final word. Over to the Mail now, Lewis. And I can't help feeling this is in your ballpark. A recent spike in ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity.
Yeah, patients are being diagnosed with ADHD and offered powerful drugs after unreliable video call assessments with private clinics, it claimed today. This is one of those Daily Mail stories where they go, quote-unquote, undercover, and they show...
This is the BBC.
Is this the BBC?
Well, the BBC did the investigation, did the undercover investigation.
You can't expect Lewis to read past the first paragraph.
Where did
He's got ADHD.
BBC Panorama. Yeah, you need some of these drugs, I'm telling you. No, this is a serious thing.
Stop for a second.
All my friends.
Stop for a second. Basically, so this is the BBC supporting the NHS. and saying the NHS wouldn't have given these people. First of all, I had ADHD as a child.
But you're going to wait a year. You're going to wait 2 years for an appointment on the NHS. That's why people go into private clinics.
So what they're saying is ADHD is completely a rubbish diagnosis. It's a non-medical condition, and they're giving out drugs which don't work, that just make people...
Man, they do work. I've got some on my back. Yeah. All my friends...
No, they give you...
Listen, all my friends have gone to private clinics and been diagnosed with ADHD, because all you do is you turn up and you say, I think I've got ADHD. They rubber stamp, charge you £600. And then you've got a prescription that you can then take down to the chemist. The NHS pays for it. So you're basically getting free NHS grade speed. And it's amazing. If you've got a tax return to do, like Elvance, stuff like that, it's absolutely, it's amazing. But I don't think it should be handed out willy-nilly.
Well, the point is, they're not saying it's exactly willy-nilly, but there are certainly psychiatrists who seem to have sprouted up like mushrooms very quickly to take advantage, as you say, of the overflow demand that has come from the fact that...
It should be given willy-nilly, but the NHS should not pay for these prescriptions. That's
it should be given willy-nilly?
If someone wants to take these kind of drugs, let them pay for it. But at the same time, and I'm against taking all kinds of medication. Let them pay for it, but it shouldn't be paid for on the NHS for £9 a prescription for a pill that's costing the NHS £100.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
OK. So you think it's fine that the excess demand is soaked up by the private sector, but you carry on paying for your prescription?
Yeah, if they want to do it, they can do it.
So is that definitely what this story is saying?
I'm not sure.
Because I'm thinking... Well, yeah, OK, fair enough. I think what it's saying is...
I'm not a newscaster. I don't want to read the news. I don't want to read this thing. I just want to comment on the thing. That's what... You're excellent for this. You're a brilliant person, Simon. I don't know what I am.
No. Telegraph now, Leo, and our favourite online safety bill has the Andrew Tates of this world in its sights.
Yeah, so misogynistic abuse online is set to be banned under plans drawn up in the House of Lords. Sorry, Lewis, you're gonna have to go back to the old-fashioned misogynistic abuse. No more online stuff. So online spaces are still a wild west for women and girls, according to Baroness Morgan. But they'll like that, women, because the horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and rugged cowboys. But this is, I mean, the online safety bill, it's gonna make it the duty of social media companies to deal with anything that's perceived to be misogynistic abuse, and they'll face fines worth up to 10% of their global turnover. And bosses,
my God, 10% of their global turnover.
That's a huge amount of money. That could make them. I mean, this is before profit. That's that's before they've made any profit. And a lot of these companies are very marginal or not making any profit anyway. And also, bosses could be jailed for up to 2 years. So it'll make social media companies very risk averse, and they'll police what's said very carefully. Because how do you judge what's misogynist?
Well, I don't think there's I can't imagine there's any way of them successfully policing it without kind of just like having such an incredibly blunt instrument that you would post a tweet with the word bitch in it, talking about your Labrador, and you'll lose your account or whatever, you know. I mean, the misogyny thing as well seems to be bubbling up and getting hammered down again and again lately. There's been all sorts of attempts to make it a new category of hate crime.
Yeah.
And that failed. There's been attempts to make wolf whistling from scaffolding into a hate crime, and that's... But you know what I mean? They keep kind of finding a way to try and get it through.
But it doesn't matter. This is not about misogyny. This is about state censorship, state control. It's about more Ofcom fingers into everything. This is, I think, if you live... Britain is such a... I'm not going to say it's a great country, because I don't think... Whatever. It's a very good country. I love it. But what's great about this country is not state control. There's too much state control.
That's every country.
It's almost, you know what it is? It's almost like there's no First Amendment in this country.
Well, that's part two in the bag. After the break, we have vigilante justice in New York City, an LA street drug that really beefs up the fentanyl, and turkey votes, though not for Christmas, hopefully. We will see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. So, Lewis, you kick us off in this section with Turkish election news in the Telegraph, and it looks too close to call, which hasn't stopped Erdogan calling it, of course.
No, this is very interesting because I don't understand Turkish politics, but it's really important, actually. It's one of the largest countries. It's 85 million people. These people produce a lot of stuff, and they're on the move, even though they're suffering from incredibly high inflation. Erdogan, which is the way he pronounces his name, says that Turkey has chosen us as he faces election runoff. But he only got 49% of the vote, which means if he'd gotten 50, he wouldn't be in the runoff. So he came so close, and he was up against this guy named Kılıç Daruoğlu. And the reason why it's called Daruoğlu is because the G is silent in the Turkish.
I think he would have done better if his name was easier to pronounce.
His first name is Kemal, which was the name of Ataturk, who was the great father of the modernisation of Turkey about 100 years ago. But, of course, Erdogan has gone back in exactly the opposite direction. Ataturk was the one who banned the fairs and, kind of propelled Turkey into the modern era. But that's basically the fight again, right? Because the Kemal candidate wants to do that again.
Well, yeah, everybody thought Erdogan looked vulnerable because the economy is doing terribly, mostly because of his ridiculous economic policies, where to combat inflation, he's decided to lower interest rates, which obviously causes inflation to spike up hugely. But he thinks it accelerates, money through the economy or something. I don't know, but it's the opposite of what other, finance experts do. Also, the tragic earthquakes that killed, tens of thousands of people, and a lot of the deaths were due to poor building codes in Turkey. And also, he's been in power for 20 years, so people thought that the other guy was going to do better, but he hasn't. He hasn't really done that well at all. Erdogan's still in front. Obviously, there's a lot of sort of rigging, and the media has given 32 hours over the last month to Erdogan, and 32 minutes to the other guy, which is nuts.
And Twitter, of course, has agreed with their demands that the up-and-coming candidates have their accounts cancelled and so on, which is pretty lousy behaviour on the whole.
But the third candidate, Sinan Ogan, much easier to pronounce name.
But he's gone because of the deep fake porn.
Right, yeah. But he polled, he got 5% of the vote, and that'll probably go to Erdogan.
Not necessarily.
No, they think that might. I think that's supposed to go to the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the opposition
He's a nationalist.
candidate.
He's a hardcore nationalist guy, so you'd think it would go to.
The interesting thing with Turkey as well, and again, I don't understand the politics of it in any kind of depth, but it clearly is so strategically important. I would be astonished if the CIA, etc., were not working behind the scenes to get the result they want. But I don't know exactly what result they do want.
Yeah.
For all he's a bit of a kind of strong man. He's obviously, and Turkey is far from an ideal state, but he does seem to hold the throttle of I mean, he has basically control over the world's refugee crisis, doesn't he? That's the main kind of nozzle that could be used to just hose down Eastern Europe if he chose to. And I think he has, broadly speaking, proved fairly stable on that front, which is what a lot of people would regard as more important than inflation.
He's willing to take whatever European money to keep the refugees there.
Yeah.
So it's the money.
Yeah, it's always the money. That is true. More from the Telegraph now, Leo. Further evidence of how far this once sound and reliable organ has fallen, in fact, in its coverage of the Daniel Penny case.
So the Marine who put the homeless man in a deadly chokehold is a good Samaritan, according to Ron DeSantis, the Florida boss who's possibly going to announce he's going to be running for president soon. So Daniel Penny is a former Marine who was recorded on a New York City subway earlier this month putting Jordan Neely in a chokehold and has been denounced as a vigilante by commentators and celebrated as a vigilante by others. So Jordan Neely, I mean, the way you read it in the paper, including the Telegraph, you'd think Jordan Neely was just some regular guy going about his business. He
muttering or something.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was threatening people. He was abusive. He was going. There's a reason people stepped in to stop him, and he had 42 prior arrests, including for kidnapping a 7-year-old girl, punching a 67-year-old woman in the face. So he clearly had mental health issues and was violent and aggressive. And this seems to be this case seems to be a Rorschach blot test.
Yeah.
So right-wing people look at it and say, no, this is a man. We've got a lawless society now since Black Lives Matter, and all the politicians came out and said we're not going to prosecute. Now we've got people have to step up and provide community policing.
I mean, I would say the New York subway, from what I understand, it's 20 years since I was there, but the New York subway is not anything like as dangerous as it is in the British imagination very often. Apparently, it's a good deal more calm than it used to be in the 80s. I think the 70s and 80s, it was becoming lawless.
It's like it's
kind of unusual.
Bus network.
Yeah, it's kind of unusual that this kind of thing breaks out. But
this is very similar to something that happened when I lived in New York, which I lived in New York for many, many years. In 1984, the Bernie Getz story, where he was basically threatened or attacked or being mugged by four black guys, and he shot him. And they didn't die. One of them eventually, I think, died. And but it was such an emotional thing that it basically, I think, it knocked some sense into New Yorkers and realized we've got a very serious problem. And I believe from that point onward, crime went down.
Right, yeah.
Whether someone should be actually shooting people on their subway cars.
But did he get the same? Because this guy's been charged with manslaughter.
Yeah.
So he stepped in to help to stop Jordan Neely threatening and putting people at risk of harm, and which you'd want people to do. If my children were on the train and
this is what annoys me, because the Telegraph, which you would think of at least neutral, if not an actual right-leaning newspaper, has said Neely was reportedly acting in an erratic manner. It was a lot more than erratic, a lot more threatening. And then he says, it says that Penny's activities were described by commentators as denounced as a vigilante by commentators, as if that's a universal. It's been a very, very even split left and right, as you say. And, I think it's a Soros DA again, isn't it? Which is another way in which Soros is currently creating
the same DA that was involved in Trump's.
Yeah. It's been politicised.
So that guy's that DA's under a lot of pressure.
Well, he's got a huge GoFundMe, Penny now. I think he's well funded. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very interesting case. The Guardian now, Lewis, and the gripping story of Vice's collapse.
Yeah, this is a magazine media company which started off as very alternative and is now, I guess, basically mainstream. And it's Vice files for bankruptcy protection amid cut price sale to consortium. And what happened is that this company, during the boom, was valued at $6 billion.
It's insane.
Insane. And according to the commentators that I've heard, is that they are a victim of go woke, go broke.
Yeah.
And they had heavy funding by Disney and Soros, mention Soros again. They'd moved from Montreal to Brooklyn, and that says a lot, you know. It's like we're very... And they were on the wrong side of a lot of issues. I would say it's a wrong
Well, they weren't questioning power anymore. I mean, Vice used to be famous for its reportage. It would send, journalists into really dangerous places and report the actual truth and get boots on the ground. And then it just changed into, how we could make, homeless people queer. Or,
listicles and the BuzzFeed type stuff.
Yeah.
I remember, they made some amazing... They're still up on YouTube, the one where they go to Liberia and follow around the sort of warlords and the various gangs there, and General Butt Naked, who was this... He was literally going to battle butt naked. It was extraordinary stuff, and you absolutely would not see it on... It was the genuine, you won't see this on mainstream media stuff. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I assume their financial model changed a little bit. I mean, Trump broke a lot of this stuff, didn't he? Because suddenly nobody really cared about what was happening in Liberia. They just wanted endless stuff that fed into the culture war that he created.
I think what people want today is they want to feel connected to what they're watching, whether it's on television like us. I think we're connecting with the people. I think GB News really connects with the people. I meet the people. They're in love with GB News, and they're in love with me. That was so Trumpy in the way I said that.
We've got time for one more story before the break. We've got Metro, and it's BLM versus BFI. Who is going to be TFO?
So, a Black Lives Matter activist faces having her company liquidated after being taken to court by the British Film Institute over an alleged debt of more than £200,000. So apparently they wanted to promote diversity and rebalance society, did a number of high-profile events at the London Film Festival, and TBB was I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure what that
the
is.
British backlist.
All right. It claims it's owed money by the media firm director over a brunch to celebrate UK-based black film and TV creatives during the festival. So they had to foot the £35,000 bill up front. So I'm really shocked that an organisation linked to Black Lives Matter isn't thorough with its accounting.
There's £200,000 for a brunch.
Yeah, man. I wish I was at that brunch.
There's a good rule of thumb. I cannot remember who came up with this rule, but where there's a subsidy, there's a scam. It's if you create these dysfunctional kind of incentives, then something rushes in to claim them. And it never works out well. You should just commission on merit, right? And then things will work.
Yeah, and there's so much money, corporate money and donations sloshing around in Black Lives Matter. The amount raised apparently was $64 billion, which is just insane.
No, not billion.
Yeah, billion.
Not for this movie, though, right?
No, not for this movie, no, but worldwide.
Worldwide. Well, that has obviously gone up and down like a rocket. We are 3/4 of the way through, and everything's still to play for. In part 4, we have TV's most admired couple, that's Holly Willoughby, and why sweeteners are not your friend, and why Carlos Tevez really needs a basic history lesson if he's going to stay in the UK. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. So we've got a few to get through in the last few minutes. Here we have the Daily Mail, and we have made it all the way to the final quartile before we encounter today's first trans outrage.
Yeah, it could possibly be in decline. So this is a Daily Mail, classic Daily Mail headline. Men can get pregnant and women can have a penis. The woke sex ed taught in British schools. As report reveals, 1 in 10 kids either wants to change their gender or already has done so. So they did a survey of kids and what their sexual education was like, and apparently 2/3 were taught that biological sex was assigned by medical professionals at birth. And this is not true. Biological sex is not assigned. Like gender you can say gender's assigned because it's a made-up construct that sits on top. But your biological sex is to do with your chromosomes and your gametes. And...
I mean, is it possible that they just haven't understood the word assigned? I suppose you've got to look at the possible kind of weak points in these whole long clauses. They might just think that means like written down or like put onto a certificate. Having been observed,
yes, they might think, the people being polled might have misinterpreted the question because obviously educational standards are slipping across other areas of education.
I mean, I would be interested to know exactly what kids do think about these things. I would be astonished if they really haven't noticed that there is a biological reality to their sex.
Well, this is the problem with you, Simon, and you, Leo, is that you believe in objective facts.
Yeah.
And they also, other people believe in objective facts. They actually believe that biological sex does not exist the way we think it exists. And
who are these they?
The people.
Are these the ones who are after open borders?
The people who are telling people it's assigned at birth. And I'll tell you why this is totally a non-story. A non-story. Because this was a survey that they had done. And they said 10% of the kids surveyed said, are they or any of their classmates, have any of their classmates or them wanted to change their gender, right? So it's anybody they know. So they asked them, and only 10% knew someone in their school.
No, it was a third know a classmate who wants to change their gender or has already done so. But 1 in 10 want to change their gender or have already done so, which I thought was an undercount.
We've got to cut through now, over to the Sun now, Lewis, and I imagine all three of us are going to keep our powder dry on this one as we're all waiting for the phone to ring.
Well, I have no idea about this. It's like there's like very big shady dealings. And before we get started on this,
we don't have time for that. Can we please carry on with the story?
You need the Louis Schaefer calendar, which is an actual real thing with... Sorry about that, Simon.
This is... so this is about Philip Schofield.
No, I'm going to tell you what it is.
I'll tell the story.
No, I want to tell it.
Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby.
That took 20 seconds.
Apparently there's tension between them. So it's like you and Simon, to be honest.
It's like me and Simon. Because Simon thinks it's his show, just like Philip Schofield thinks it's his show, and the thing about Philip Schofield, I think he's been exposed as kind of possibly a creepy guy. Something happened with his brother that he didn't. Would you pay attention, Simon? Oh my God, I'm going to get an email from Simon.
What's happening? Are you done?
You asked me to discuss it. You keep on talking.
Time's now, Leo. By your calculations, I would assume that Carlos Tevez is Spanish for ungrateful.
So Carlos Tevez, who I've never heard of, to be honest, has revealed he refused to learn English during his 7 years in the Premier League because of his cultural problem with Britain. He says he blamed the Falklands War for his uncle's alcoholism. So his uncle went to fight in the fight. It's not our fault Argentina invaded our territory.
This is like the most insulting. I know it's way down the list, but this to me is really seriously bad. This guy's willing to come and play Man City or Man United, take huge amounts of money from English fans, but he won't learn the language because he finds the notion of Englishness so offensive to him for a war we didn't even start.
Yeah, and yet he's taken all those £10 notes with the Queen's face on them. He likes that bit of Britain, doesn't he?
Or maybe he's taken over the British ethos so much that he refuses to learn a second language. He came here.
That's possible.
And I'm going to say one more thing: is that maybe he's just making an excuse why he didn't want to learn the language, why he couldn't learn the language. It's very hard to learn a language. Give the guy a break.
We have 1 minute.
And how does he know who Carlos Tevez is? How come you don't know?
We have 1 minute, Lewis, and I'm going to let you talk about your favourite subject, which is sweetness.
It's my calendar. It's fantastic. It's a real thing. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually give Simon a copy of this thing, just to try to make up for it. He'll probably throw it in the rubbish like I gave him a gift of some masking tape to put on his mouth because he's got sleep apnea. And I'm going to give him a copy of the Louis Schaefer calendar. Go to the Louis Schaefer's website at louisschaefer.com.
Have you sold any yet?
Yes. We've sold dozens. Honestly, it's unbelievable. And it's people. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I don't mean to mess up your show, Simon. I have such respect for you.
What was the story?
Do we have to? The show's over.
15 seconds.
15 seconds. So you talk for 15 seconds.
So replacing sugar with sweeteners does not affect weight control in the long term. So if you try sweeteners, which taste horrible, they taste too sweet, it doesn't actually help you lose weight. Probably because you're the sort of fat person who tries sweeteners in the first place.
Go on.
I mean, that's also a horrible story. That's the
well, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages.
You're not going to blame me.
We have the Daily Mail goes blast at Starmer's bid to rig elections. We have the Times. Fifth of all taxpayers will be in the 40 pence band. We have Guardian, Tory MPs tell Braverman quit the PM pitch and stick to the day job. Express, Suela, white people should not feel guilty. And iNews, UK backs Ukraine to join NATO. And finally, the Daily Star, close encounters of the boring kind. Those were your front pages. Thank you very much. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Leo Kearse and Louis Schaefer. Andrew Doyle is back tomorrow with Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. In the meantime, we're back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with some
I love you,
vaguely
Simon.
functional guests. We are
I love
we're
you,
off
Simon.
now, but
I'm not trying to mess up the show.
Good night.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is